I was over at a friend's house, and we went into his parents' room, and he said, "Hey, look at this." And his dad had a Playboy by the bed. Then growing up, that was still just kind of in the back of your mind. I didn't know it at the time, but that was an escape for me. That was a place where I wasn't bullied. That was a place where I wasn't made fun of. I wasn't teased. I wasn't, But I can see now, how much that drove me further into secrecy, shame, what's wrong with me, those types of things.
I think the beginning of married life was just sweet. I don't know. I think once children came and, other factors in life got more challenging, is when it started to feel like something's off. I
thought this is the answer to the problem. Now I have this person, and she wants me, and we'll be together, and we'll be married, and that will solve the issues that I had. And I did not share with her nearly the extent of my struggles with pornography and some other things. I'd shared with her some things from my past, probably just enough to get them off my chest and to make sure she knew what I thought she needed to know. But looking back, I don't think I really knew what all I needed to share and disclose. I didn't know the depth of what I was struggling with at the time, or the why.
Jason was serving on our church board. I had never heard of Pure Desire, and they were coming to our church, and frankly, I was super annoyed. I did not want to spend the weekend at a conference for an organization I'd never heard of. But first night, first thing they do is have everybody take a sexual addiction assessment. And I'll never forget, Jason slides his assessment over to me, and we joke now, this is the first time he ever scored higher than me on a test. But that was the moment of, Diane always said the language of feeling hit by a bus, so much context and so much misunderstanding and so much pain.
It was the first time I'd ever had hope that this was something, Pure Desire was about something more than behavior modification. Stop what you're doing, or pray harder. When they started talking about the brain and the neuroscience and the chemistries of that it gave me that glimpse of hope that I think gave me the courage to share with her. Hey, if this element is a part of it, then maybe there is some hope here, and maybe that's why I had the courage to show her my test, because I still didn't want her to know, but I had hope just from the brief introduction I had to how Pure Desire approaches this compared to all of the other things I had tried in the past.
He said he was filled with all this hope, but very different than how I was feeling at the time. He said, "Dr. Ted invited me to be in his group. I think this is a big deal." And I was like, "That's great. This is your problem. Go get the help that you need." And he said, "Well, there's a caveat." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "You have to be in a group, and we have to do counseling together." And I was like, "Oh, heck no." This is not my problem. And no way. I'm not going to be the reason our marriage fails. I'm not going to look my kids in the eyes and say, "Mom said no." But I was totally banking on the fact, I give it 2 weeks, and then I'll drop out because he dropped out.
It wasn't until about a year into our counseling, I remembered that before this service, my friend called me and said, "You need to come over. My dad has a prophecy for you." And I went over. He sits there and he says, "Jason, I had this dream, I had this vision that you were in church, and all of a sudden at the front of church, this black swirling cesspool starts just spinning and spinning and spinning, and it starts small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it gets more and more violent, and it just starts sucking everything in and consuming everything around it. That I see you get up and you walk to it and you jump into it head first. You dive right into the middle of this. And as soon as you do, the swirling stops and the circle shrinks and disappears and everything's at peace again." It wasn't until later on in our counseling with Dr. Ted and Diane that we started talking about prophetic promises. It brought me back to that day, and I told Dr. Ted that story, and he gets emotional, and he's like, "That's what that prophecy was about. It was about you getting up and coming and seeing me and starting that journey, and that swirling was your life and your family, and the destruction that pornography and sex addiction can have and can cause. And that's what would have kept happening had we not started the journey that day together. It would have been something that just continued to swirl and consume and destroy, and there would have been no stopping it.
Control and perfection were really like the gods that I served. And it's very hard to go into a group setting and maintain those. I tried really hard for the first couple weeks to be a rock and have no emotion. Which is just funny now because I encountered the Lord and community for like the first real and healthy way in my first like Pure Desire group, like, and it rocked my world. Like, friends I'll have for a lifetime. And Jason never missed a week. He did his homework, like, and it became, I don't know, the part of the week we both craved, and was just such a life spring in what felt like a desert of our marriage at that time. I can't say enough about the importance of the counseling component though, because while what was happening in group was amazing and teaching us what vulnerable community looks like, the counseling component is where so much of the deeper, like, personal work happens. Again, I thought I was going into this to fix him, but what happened in there was that I learned I had some major family of origin and childhood trauma that was down pretty deep and needed to get worked through if we were going to have a chance of moving forward in health, and even, I think even more importantly, not repeating the past with our kids, which, I mean, became the hope of this journey. How can we change things? And so the counseling piece was just, it was hard and scary and worth every single minute. We thought we had our lives planned out. Like, we owned businesses, we had careers, like we thought we knew where things were going. And then as we finished our first year of group and counseling, it was like suddenly these passions we had for what had been our life previously were being replaced with like this passion for what's happening in these groups and wanting to lead and help bring that to other families.
We were two people who were madly in love with each other, got married, had no idea what we were doing. I think before we knew it, we were roommates, each struggling and not knowing why, not knowing what to call it. Pure Desire has created something where you are not alone, and where you really feel like it is a family, it's a community of people that really want to push through the shame and push through the guilt and help give you a glimpse of who we are in Christ and what we mean to God. Pure Desire cares about the whole person, and that understanding that the behavior is a part of that, but that at the root of who that person is not a bad person, it's not an evil person, it's not a sick person, it's not even a broken person, it's a person that needs healing.
Pure Desire resulted in freedom. I think freedom to be who Christ called us to be. Just set our marriage and our family and our dreams on a whole new path because of that freedom.